All right, we are going to get started. Okay, so welcome everyone to Founder Saga. My name is Jesse Randall. I'm one of the co-founders of Sweater, and we are conducting Founder Saga as part of our own raw story in opening up the venture capital asset class to the public. Our desire was to create value for other founders and aspiring founders throughout the world, and to learn from founders like McKensie and Colby, who have gone through the toughest part of getting off the ground, and now they're dealing with the other toughest part, which is running the company once you're successful. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, McKensie and Colby.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're stoked to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump in, just one thing that I want to mention to our attendees. We're doing a little bit of a different element of Q&A. Instead of just looking at your questions as you list them out, we're actually going to select one of you to come on live in here with us in the room towards the end of this presentation, and actually talk with McKensie or Colby about your question. And then we'll kick you out again, and we'll get some final words of advice from these two before we cut off. So in order to select that person, you need to, submit your question in the Q&A tab. Don't put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A tab. And my co-founder is on the outside watching those, and he's going to select one of you to come in and join us towards the end. So make sure that you keep that in mind as we go through this. Best question will come on in. So now let's turn the attention to McKensie and Colby. I'm so excited to have you guys here.
We're excited to be here. And we saw you you bought a wallet the other, was it a few weeks ago?
Oh yeah, where's that thing? Show this off.
We probably wouldn't have agreed to do this thing if we didn't know you were a threadhead.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm glad that I crossed that barrier. So to get started, what I'd like to do is get a clear view for the audience of where you guys are at right now. Tell about kind of what kind of milestones you're hitting currently that you're willing to disclose. Kind of give a view of what the company is now, and then we're going to step back in time for a couple of minutes and talk about what it was like on day one. So
cool.
Give us the quick pitch of Thread Wallets and where you guys are at.
Sweet. Yeah, we started out e-commerce native 6 years ago, and we've kind of rode that wave. So we're very heavy e-commerce to date. Where was it? 65% on direct to consumer on our website, 15% on Amazon. So that's the bulk of online, just e-commerce, and then the remaining is as a mix of wholesale. So we just started opening up a lot of doors in your kind of like your surf skate, snow boutiques across the country. There's 15 reps in 8 different territories throughout the US, opening up doors. We have a few big key accounts, Shields being one of our favorites, Zoomies, we're working with Tilly's. So kind of starting to get that channel up and running and starting to scale that. But the mass part of our business, and I would say our bread and butter, is e-commerce.
Nice. Yeah, you really nailed that timing perfectly with that direct consumer trend, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we
lucked out big time on that.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea on milestones, as you mentioned, I think we can disclose some. We started out relatively slow. Relatively 150,000. That was a lot of money to us when we started, more than we ever thought we would actually make on this.
Hey guys, I just lost you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you now. Yeah, I don't know what happened to you. So you guys can hear me all right? Yeah, Cam.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Cam said they lost you too. I think you're back.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, now you're back.
Okay,
It
cool.
was weird.
Just wrapping up what I was saying, we'll do our first year of 8 figures, low 8 figures this year.
Nice. Congratulations. That's a huge milestone.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of wallets. How many wallets do you have to sell to get to that?
Oh, I wish I knew the number, actually.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Oh, shoot, guys, I lost you again. Uh-oh. Still gone. Oh, there you are. I think I hear you again. Why don't we jump back in time and talk about what things were like on day one? I mean, like talking about, like, I call it backup napkin. So the day you came up with this, I mean, what was the back of Napkin? I saw your post earlier, so I think that might be a clue into that. But give us
Yeah.
an idea of where this really started. What was the egg?
So I was in Hawaii. I got an opportunity to go play soccer at BYU Hawaii. So I was out and I was such a newbie. I jumped into the ocean with my wallet and lost it like within the first week. And so I go online to find a new wallet and I search men's wallets on Google, and it's just a never-ending scroll of just the same wallet pretty much with a different brand on it. Bulky, brown, black, bifold, and it was just ugly. And I didn't really want that. I wanted something minimalist. And so in the meantime, before I found something, I just wrapped a rubber band around my cards, and I actually just kept on to that for like a few months, and I loved it. And then fast forward, I was in a class at BYU Hawaii as an entrepreneurship class, and they do this little conference over a Saturday, which was start and launch a Kickstarter campaign in 24 hours. And so they're going through this conference and they're pulling up all these different ideas that had raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they were like these wallets, like very easy to design, easy to produce wallets. And I was like, I could do something better than that. And I love my minimalist rubber band. What if I just made a better rubber band of sorts? But I also really loved lifestyle brands. So Stance was really up and coming at that time. I love Vans, Brixton, some of these big, action sports companies that I love, and I love the expression that they have. And so I thought, what if I just came up with a really cool minimalist wallet that had some expression on it? And so I started to explore different ideas. I wasn't able to launch that idea in the 24-hour as part of the conference, but I started to really explore that. I moved back to Utah, and I was going to school at BYU and playing soccer there as well. And I started to look at ways to print onto elastic, and I just started messing around with different materials, as you saw in that post. And I finally landed on something as simple as an elastic sewn with one straight line, and that was it. And I needed to find a way to print on it. And so I was searching around, and I found this company in Utah to help me print on it. And there's a funny story there. But before that, I take it to McKensie. We were dating at the time, and I take it over to her house. She had this old sewing machine in her room. And I go, here's my idea. This is what I want to do. I showed her like some of the samples I had or whatever. And she goes, why don't you throw a keychain, a little loop with a key ring on it? And I was like, really? I was like, I kind of thought it would be more of like a masculine thing, just that's it, bare bones. And she threw it on there, and
I went into my bathroom and I found my old hair rubber bands.
Yeah.
Like old hair ties and stuff, and I just like started chopping them into little pieces to sew between the one seam to give us a little keychain loop.
So in her childhood bedroom, as we were dating, we came up with that very first prototype, or what you now know as the thread wallet.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you guys weren't married at the time. Did you get married because of this, or?
No? Probably. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got to commend you. I've been married for 14 years, and I think my wife and I would have a hard time building a company together, as much as we love each other and love our family.
We do have a hard time sometimes. It's not all sailing.
Yeah. Well, I think you just painted a really good picture of, like where you're at now, where you came from such a simple idea, and simple positioning has turned into something amazing. While we're talking about family, one of the topics you selected was founding team to talk about. So let's talk about that for a second. And then I want to talk more about how your product evolved and talk more about some specific questions around that. So with the two of you, I mean, let's chat about that. Was there ever anybody else in the picture with you to try to get Thread off the ground, or has it always just been the two of you?
Yeah, so when Colby first started, he was playing soccer, like you mentioned, and he had a friend named Romy that was into entrepreneurship as well. So they kind of like laid the groundwork for it. And Romy and his wife were there in part of like the first 6 or 7 months. And then that when we were still in college, or Colby was in college, I'd been graduated for about a year, but Romy and his wife ended up choosing to work for his dad. So they moved to Georgia and we bought them out. So that's a part of the story we don't focus too heavily on because it was such like a short-term thing. And the amount we had to pay out was like very small because we didn't even
I
really
will
have
say
a company yet.
that piece of the puzzle though was so divine, because without that, because Romy was really actually pretty well off personally, financially. And not, I mean, at the time I was like, whoa, you have a lot of money. But he helped really, that first Kickstarter campaign we launched, believe it or not, he was like 6,000 of the $8,000 that we raised. And pretty much, yeah. So from a public view, it looks like we raised 8,000, but really it was just like mostly his money. But that was enough money to get the machinery and all the equipment we needed to actually start this thing and start to produce in-house. So that was, without Romy, I don't even know if this could have been a thing, honestly.
Yeah. So he was there for the first little bit, and when he decided to go work for his dad in Georgia, we paid him out for like basically the cost of all the equipment and stuff that he bought. So yeah, he has been one of them. And then we've had help from friends and family along the way, and now we have our team and an executive team. But that's how it's pretty much been us from the beginning.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think that most people don't realize how much founder movement there is at the beginning sometimes. So if I can ask you, I mean, specific to buying him out, I mean, what was that conversation like between the two of you trying to decide whether or not to do that? Because I mean, that required you guys putting up some cash. It sounds like it was pretty early, so you didn't know maybe if it was going to work yet or not. I mean, what was that conversation like, and how did Romy take it?
The reason he went off to Atlanta, he was really gung-ho about the idea, and he saw the vision. Short story, it was wallets, we actually were going to do socks. And so he placed an order in China for $5,000, which was a ton of money for us at the time. And I convinced him that socks wasn't the way to go, but wallets was. And so he canceled the order and lost all that money, and we got 0 socks. So he really believed in the idea, and we worked really well together, and we're still really good friends. But I was in this kind of like fork in the road where I could either, go do financial planning with my dad. I had an opportunity to play professional soccer. And then we had this stupid wallet idea that I had no idea if we wanted to do. And so because there was a lot of question marks, I think he was just like, I just need something more secure, and I need to go back home. I have this great opportunity with my dad. So that part of the decision making was actually just like pretty clean cut. It was like, okay, I don't even know if we're going to do this. And then when I was really, McKensie and I were praying about it, and we had this idea of this wallet, I was just like, let's just give it a go. So McKensie and I decided we'll give it 6 months, all we got for 6 months, and just see if it turns into something. And in those 6 months, we launched that campaign within 3 months, and we actually started to get more validation. It was our second Kickstarter campaign, so we really started to see people actually liking them. And
there's a lot more put together of a campaign. Like if you Google or search thread wallets on Kickstarter, you'll see the first one and how terrible it was, and that it was just like for a class project. And then the other ones are a little bit more credible and well done.
Yeah, so we raised that money, and then we launched our website like the day or two after, and then hit like another 16 grand in the first few days. And it really just opened our eyes to like, this could turn into something. And so there was really no obligation, like as far as the contract, there was no equity. We had 0 like LLC setup or anything really with Romy. But I think just out of my feeling of like, I need to pay this guy back. He's the reason we started. So it wasn't really like a tough conversation. He was just like, I kind of washed my hands of thread wallets, but I'm doing my own thing. And I just called him up and I was like, yo, we're seeing some traction here, and I just want to give you back the money that you gave us. And so it was as easy as that. We paid him back within the first few months, and it was all good.
Oh, that's great. What a good smooth transition. So with yeah, no, that's a great story. Not everyone transitions like that.
Yeah.
I've seen far messier stories. So between the two of you then, I mean, at what point did you really feel like you were more than onto something? Like when you really were like, yeah, we're doing this, and this is going to be our thing for the next few years. How long did it take?
Well, when we first started, I remember we were living in Hawaii together because he'd gone back to play soccer again at BYU Hawaii. So the story of us bouncing back and forth is another thing. But we were in Hawaii at the time. We were living in a small apartment at the on-house or on-campus housing, and we were starting to sell these at farmers markets. And there was like a decent amount of traction there, and things were going well. And I remember I think we were like sitting on the couch with wallets around us one day prepping for the farmers markets, and we were like, we could sell 5 to 10 wallets a day. Like we sold 20 today at the farmers market. Like if we could sell like 5 or 10, we'd make around 50,000 a year. That's great for us. So we
set the bar real high.
Yeah, we set the bar really high. Like 50, 60,000, like that's great. It's just you and I. Let's see. So as he was pursuing these other outlets, we were like, you know what, we'd rather work together. We don't see a long-term career path in soccer. Financial planning isn't what he wants to do, and he's not a suit and tie type of guy. As you can tell, he's in a sweatshirt and a hat. So we were like, like Colby said, we were like, let's just give it 6 months. So when we started to see the snowball rolling down the hill and like gaining a social media following, and these are all, like you pointed out at the beginning, things that we're really grateful that we got on the bandwagon early, I guess, like D2C, e-commerce brand, social media marketing. Like a lot of these things were still really young, so there wasn't as much competition. So we started getting traction, and then we were like, okay, like once we had 6 months in and 6 months of validation, we were like, let's do 6 months more. And then it was like, oh, we closed out our first year really well. Let's do another year. Like, I don't feel like there was ever one moment where we were like, this is thread, this is it, this is the rest of our life. It was kind of just like daily. It was like, okay, like let's just keep going with what, like things are working out, let's keep going with it. And then probably when we started hiring our first like employees is when we were like, okay, this is like more than us. It's more than just like a short-term side gig or something that's fun. Like this is like, we have people we're paying and like are making careers out of this. And I think that that's probably when we were like, okay, this is it for us. Like for right now, for the next 5, 10, whatever it turns out to be, like this is where our priority is going to be in focus in terms of career.
So how long would you say, did it take to get to that point when you started hiring outside people and whatnot?
Yeah, for the first 2 years, we did all the production in-house. We did all the fulfillment. We did even the bookkeeping. We really didn't outsource much even. Everything was in-house, and it was just between McKensie and I.
We had help, like Ryan, my brother, helped like with some paying people like hourly, like, oh, hey, we need help with this order. Will you come help us? Or like, we need help sewing this, like, let's outsource it. Like there was small things that were outsourced, but for the most part, it was us.
Yeah, I would say, I can't even remember when we hired Logan. Logan was our first, he was still like a contractor, was an employee, but he was, I would say, one of the bigger hires we made because he was at Vivint and he was spending millions of dollars on ads. And while it wasn't consumer product, it was, he was in that system. He was understanding Facebook and all these social media channels. And so we hired him, found him through a friend, and that's really when things started to scale. So I would say our third year is where we really started
like 2016, 2017.
Yeah, and we started to dial in, our marketing and our creative and optimizing ads. And that's when I think it really became real, like Kenzie was saying. That's when we started to see, we hit our first $1 million year that third year. And that was, I think, when my eyes started to really widen and realize there's this many people in the world that want to buy a wallet right now. Like I never thought in a million years that we would sell this many wallets.
Yeah, when we were just like 5 to 10 wallets a day. And I remember like we're officially established as an LLC January 1 of 2015. So it was probably that first year and a half that was just us. And I remember I think that whole year, Colby was like, this is such a dumb idea. Like, this is so stupid. Like, it's too simple. Like, he'd just look at it and I'd be like, you're not giving yourself enough credit. Like, people are buying it. Like, people like using it. I like using it. And he'd just be like, no, it's so, like, you look at, I think in entrepreneurship, you look at what other companies are doing and big tech companies, or they're huge, they have whole development teams or product teams.
I mean, if you're comparing yourself to Corey Stevens, who's designing some the best shoes, the most
Taft.
At Taft, and then you look at an elastic wallet that took you like 5 seconds to sew. Like, I was kind of just embarrassed by it. But I mean, it started to, sometimes the simple products are the ones that do well. So
yeah,
rode that wave hard.
keep things simple.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, I'll tell you, there's plenty of software companies that never hit 8 figures in revenue. That's for sure. I know plenty of them. So let's talk more about that product path that you took. So you did 2 Kickstarter campaigns. Sounds like the first one was mostly self-supported.
Yeah.
I've taken part in many Kickstarter campaigns that ended up being mostly self-funded. I know what that's like. Your next one sounded like it was a lot more successful by some measure. So tell me the difference between those. What was the difference between the product, or was it just the marketing that was different? What made the difference there?
Well, we had what we called the 1.0, which was literally an elastic sewn together. And then because we knew we wanted to, that's when we gave ourselves the 6 months, like, let's give it all we got. We're like, well, we don't really have much money. Let's do another Kickstarter campaign. But then Kickstarter limits you on not being able to do the same product twice. So we're like, well, then we got to adjust the product. And so we thought, well, what could we do? And so we thought to add the second pocket. So there's 2 elastic sleeves now. And that's what was the second, that was the evolution, the 2.0. So we launched that. And I think the difference in the campaigning was, first off, it wasn't a school project. And it was also, I started to realize that some of these big wallet products and other small accessories that were doing well on Kickstarter were driving traffic through Facebook. I didn't realize that. I thought that Kickstarter alone was driving the traffic, that people were just going to Kickstarter organically. But then I realized, actually, no, there's so much ad spend there. And I started to dive into some of these agencies that spent tons of money. And one of them was out of Utah. They're called Funded Today. And they actually did one of the wallets that did really well on Kickstarter. And so I reached out to them and somehow convinced them to take on our project. And I think that was the difference in the amount of money raised, was just we were able to drive traffic more. And
well, and we just put more time and energy into it. Like when we launched the first one, I was there. I was like, we were dating and I knew that were working on it, but there was no marketing behind it. And yes, we had, with the second campaign, we had the agency behind us that was helping drive traffic and stuff, but we also took a lot more time to market the product outside of that, like influencer marketing, reaching out to family and friends and asking them to share on Facebook, or and a small email blast to the few emails that we gathered from markets or whatever it was. There was a little bit more time and energy focused into creating a plan to drive traffic outside of using Funded Today, which I don't like throwing other companies on the bus, under the bus, but if anyone out there is like, oh, Funded Today, I want to do a Kickstarter, I'm going to look into them, I personally wouldn't recommend them. I feel like I have to like kind of give that caveat. They helped us raise money, but it wasn't the best experience. So if there's someone listening that's thinking that, I wouldn't recommend that, and you can contact us and we'd fill you in on all the reasons why.
Gotcha. So the product there, after that second Kickstarter campaign, I mean, how did you learn how to do product? I mean, you've got a ton of SKUs now. I mean, what started feeding that development process? What changed internally that allowed you to start going broader?
Well, we actually kept that first wallet for 2 years. It was the only SKU on our only silhouette on our website. We did go deep in the styles, the amount of styles. That was really fun for me, was just the art aspect. And I slowly started to kind of refine my own skill set in design and product design. But we actually kind of took from our customer and the feedback they were giving us in order to direct which products to launch next. And we actually just noticed a lot of our customers were wearing our wallets on a lanyard that they just got at some random convention. It's kind of an ugly lanyard. And obviously they thought it was a very functional product, but it didn't look well with our wallets. And so we thought, why don't we just provide the lanyard as well? So that was actually the second product. And it was born out of just watching how our customers used our product. And then I really wanted to start to expand the product line into more than just this like simple wall. I wanted to give maybe hit a different audience with a higher price point, maybe a little bit more sophisticated look. So we started looking at leather, and that was where we introduced a leather card holder with the elastic sleeve still on one side that gives it expression. And then we also launched a bifold, which was another higher price point, a little bit more kind of like the design wasn't out in the open. It's still closed. So it had a little hit of expression, but it was very intentional with who we were trying to acquire as customers and also hitting different price points. And then we started looking at phone cases were like smartphones went nuts, and everyone had phone cases. And I noticed there's some phone case wallets that were popular, and I started to explore how we could attach the elastic pocket on the back of a phone case. And that was our third Kickstarter campaign, because that required a lot of higher MOQs to hit with our factories, and it was just more expensive product than like a really cheap elastic. Yeah. And so we needed to raise more money. And so we did another Kickstarter campaign. I don't even remember what year that was. That was a little bit better, but we actually learned a lot from that of not so much like product and marketing, but it was more of just who our customer was, because it actually became, where I set out to be more male, it actually became more female dominant. And females didn't really understand, especially like younger female, they didn't understand Kickstarter and how that even worked. And so while we were kind of banking on like this huge campaign, we thought we had everything dialed. It actually didn't do it was like first base hit, you know what I mean? It was enough to launch that silhouette, but it wasn't like what we were hoping. We were thinking like 100,000. I think we raised like what? 30,000 or so. Anyway, so that's kind of been the evolution of the product. But we now want to position ourselves. We're dropping the name, wallets off of we have the trademark for Thread.
Oh, really?
And we're positioning Thread to become all things carry. So carry accessories like backpacks, and
we just launched a bag this past year.
Yeah, our crossbody bag.
Nice.
And that was always the idea. The long run was always kind of like, let's expand this, but we need to stick with a niche. We need to figure out what category is such an afterthought and it's cheap, and we can really have that product market fit. And that was wallets. And then this expansion into bigger products, more carry accessories.
So it'll be a slower expansion, because we still have so much room to establish ourselves as like the wallet brand. But the crossbody bag is a great companion piece. I will say that like in terms of product, it's been really interesting because we've kind of tried multiple ways of developing our products. Like we have a product team now that helps us, but we have gone from like a 3P, not a 3PL, that's our virtual box. Were they supply chain?
Yeah, they're supply chain.
Like we went through a company that came recommended to us, and they helped us source the product in China and all of this stuff. And we got like our quotes back for the orders, and our margins were so much slimmer because this company took,
just adding more middlemen.
It just adds more middlemen. So Colby was like, this is so ridiculous. Like our elastic wallets are so inexpensive, and it's almost double with this marketing or this supply chain company. So we're gonna do it ourselves. So Colby went on Alibaba himself and just started back and forth with companies. Can you match this elastic? And we went to LA and met with a elastic supplier out there. Like it was a lot of us just figuring it out as we go. And I think that can be the most overwhelming thing for young founders, is kind of like, where do I start? Like I have this idea, and you just have to kind of keep going and keep testing, because even if you look at our Kickstarter projects on Kickstarter, the second one, when we launched the Thread 2.0, it has a seam at the bottom that we sewed to keep the elastic together so that your cards wouldn't fall through, but then that wasn't functional, so we removed that. And there's just been a lot of reiterations. And I remember Colby, probably within the first 8 months of working on Thread, he had reached out on Alibaba to a company that made like 100 units for us. And they were almost perfect, just a little off. Like the design didn't come out exactly what we wanted, but because it wasn't perfect, we just gave up on it and then did all the production ourselves. And we would have saved so much headache if we just would have kept testing, like gone back and said, hey, the elastic's a little too wide and a little too shiny. Can we change this? And so a lot of it just comes from, like practicing, getting to know the process. We've been to China multiple times now to talk to our suppliers, and just learning as you grow, which is a really fun part of the product because it's opened up,
Yeah, you just hit on like a dozen things that I wish we could dive into. It's awesome. I mean, like product development, I mean, especially physical products. Like I've only dealt with physical products a few times myself. I'm mostly in software, but going after physical product, I mean, I think if there's something that I've at least observed is that your eye as the founder or the product creators, your eye for what is perfect to you needs to be met, right? That you really shouldn't compromise backwards, you know, and just say, well, that's good enough. Like if you're really going to excel in this space, is that a true statement? Do you feel like if you're going to do it, like make sure you do it right? Or how would you approach that?
Man, I'm such the MVP, minimum viable product. Just, I think a lot of founders get scared to share their idea and show people and talk about it because someone might knock them off. And it's like, I don't think people realize how much energy and effort and money and time and all that just goes into, like, if somebody really wanted to knock you off, that would be a long time. It would take a long time. And I don't think we need to be so like close to the chest with our ideas. And so I think getting it out there in the marketplace as soon as possible, even like now, I mean, we have to be a little bit more refined because we have an audience and
they have an expectation.
Yeah, but like still, we still launch just very minimum viable product, like as quickly as we can to get feedback, and then we refine. I think that's the best model, because you can get paralyzed just tinkering around in your house privately for years, spending tons of money on building a product that maybe you don't even know people actually want, you know. And so that's my mentality is be more open, because you actually will get better, honest feedback that will help refine the product.
So let's kind of like backtracking on what I said, like don't just push for perfection to the nth degree, but know what the core product is and then get it out in the real world, right? And let people tell you
and be willing to like listen to your customers, your audience, and their feedback. And we've done that. I mean, this year alone, we've launched multiple products where we launch it and then we're like, oh, you know what? We should cut that elastic size down a little bit, or the elastic's not tight enough. We need to fix that based off the reviews we're getting. Like, but it's good to just try to get going with things.
You bring up a good point though, Jesse. Like the balance of finding like where is it sufficient enough to put it in the marketplace. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be good enough to get the honest validation, because you might launch something too early and realize if I just made a little bit of a different tweak, that it would have been a different feedback. And maybe launching too early could be the end of something that could have been something great, you know, if you just give up, you know. So it's like there is a balance for sure. And I don't know, there's no like one answer. Every product's different, even, you know, consumer versus tech and all that. But I think it doesn't have to be perfect. I think that's like the overarching theme.
Yeah, honest validation. That's something I'm going to go and like put on my wall. Honest validation. I think that's awesome. You could write a whole book and just call it honest validation.
So true.
That's fantastic.
Most ideas you're asking your friends and family about what they think, and if there's people who care about you, they're probably going to be a little bit like reserved on their feedback. So you're getting this false validation.
But customers are not reserved.
Yeah.
Like they will let you know if they do not like the product.
Plus, like when you're asking your friends and family, they might say that's a great idea, that's genius, whatever. But it's like they don't have to pull out their wallet and spend money on it, you know, to say that. But like Kickstarter for us was perfect because it was random people, and they're putting money down. They're pulling out their wallet. They're putting their money where their mouth is. And that for us is like the best validation. Like you get money in the door. That's like, you can't ask for anything better than that. So I think that plus farmers markets, there's a lot of validation that you get in a face-to-face environment, because on the computer screen, they're just sitting behind. We don't get to interact with our customers when they're shopping online. We don't know what they're thinking, what they're talking about in designs, what's going in their brain. But when you're in a face-to-face environment, you get to see their facial expressions. They're usually with a friend or a family member, and they're talking, oh, these are so cute, or oh, I love that design. I think that person would really like that. Or will these hold my cards? Like, are my cards going to fall? Like these questions, these things that you get in a face-to-face environment are priceless. And so
I love
like
the idea of like the simplicity of being like in a farmer's market, right? Like it's like zero cost to do it. You just need some product, get some people to genuinely interact that you don't know. I love that. I think that's advice I
We
would
would
carry
go
forward
stand
and
on
tell anyone.
local campuses. Like we would just stand on local
Yeah.
campuses and ask them about our product and like hand it out.
Yeah.
And we still do that. Like you did that recently about something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I wish we could keep talking about product all day. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I wanted to take about 5 minutes to invite someone in for a question, and then 5 minutes of final wisdom that you guys might want to share. So I've got Aiden here that I'm going to. Oh yeah, that's right. You do. Thanks for staying a little extra.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Thanks, Jesse.
You just got me.
Okay, cool.
Not as cool. But here, I can help.
Better half, the better half. All right, so we're going to bring in Aiden here. He had a question that I'm going to let him ask you. So I think he's coming in. Aiden, make sure you take off your mute and turn on your video if you got it.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad. Just watching this. This was great. I learned a lot, and your products are really cool.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah, I just had a question. I've had a little bit of history of being a founder myself. So I was just curious, what was a moment when you were doing Threads that everything on the outside looked like it was going really good and you guys seemed like you were on top of the world, but internally there might have been a terrifying situation that was looming?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I was gonna say a bad word, but I'm gonna reserve myself. Actually, this past like September, I'm gonna say it was a month where shit kind of hit the fan. So if you come to our website, our social media, like everything looks really good and put together. And we were riding this wave. Like July and August were our best months ever. Like we had some really strong months. Like first months where we hit over $1 million in sales, like just on our e-commerce site alone. So we were like amped. And then September hit, and this year alone has proved really crazy for everyone, right? And we had a weird back to school. I think there was a little bit of buyer fatigue with things because the holidays are kind of coming up. There's not a lot of good promotional moments in September besides Labor Day, which we weren't going to take advantage of, but we did a sell because we needed some momentum. But our CPAs were through the roof. Like where our normal CPA, we try to hit for around $14 and like $4 profit per order. We were seeing like $20 plus CPAs with like, and losing money. Like some days, like we were in the red, and it was a really humbling moment because we just had come off of being announced number 104 on the Inc. 5000, like 2 of our best months. And internally it was like, whoa, this is really humbling. And we had a moment with our team where we were like, we're actually so grateful for this, because it's easy, I think, when you see these, like you're riding these waves of success and you're stoked, that you kind of forget how to be super nimble and like, okay, we've got to like pivot really quick and we've got to change this marketing message up. And it was a really good moment for us to kind of remember, like, we don't have all the answers. We don't have everything together. Like we've got to remain nimble and agile and quick and lean. And it was a really good moment for us, actually. Despite how hard it was, like financially, it was a really good month for us to learn those lessons.
Very cool. Thanks for answering.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, that was a great question. Thanks, Aiden. I'm gonna kick you back to attendee.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and man, what an experience though. I think, part of what, our intention of doing this was so that, founders that are kind of getting in the water for the first time or are currently in the water, that they realize that everybody is in the same icy water. It's hard for everybody, and
no one
even
knows
on the outside,
we're all making it up.
and that nobody knows what they're doing. Isn't that the best? I mean, seriously.
It's so true.
Yeah. Well, we just got a few minutes left, so I'll turn the time over to you. What would you share with aspiring or current founders that might be following in your footsteps?
Okay, so there are like 3, I think it's 3. I might be wrong on my numbers here, but 3 pieces of advice that I always give people if they're starting out or they're on their journey. And the first one is advice that we got from a friend when they were starting their business, is that you should never compare your beginning to somebody else's middle or end. I think it can be really easy to look at what other people are doing and like, wow, they're crushing it. But again, just like we talked about, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And a lot of companies, you would be surprised. I remember recently I was watching an episode of Shark Tank. I really looked up to the company Rumple Blankets, and they were on Shark Tank pitching, and I've looked up to them as like, whoa, they've got it all together. And then when he was like sharing their numbers and like how much profit they actually have, I was like, whoa, like we're both learning. Like I shouldn't be looking up to them as like they have all the answers. Like we're both learning and growing, have ways that we can improve. So I think that's really important advice. And I think that for us, like we've gotten knocked off a handful of times by even local companies that we thought were friends, like some kind of sad scenarios. And you just can't focus on like these things like, oh, but ours is better, ours is this. You just have to keep your head down and focus on what you do best and make it work. So that's my first piece of advice. Don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle or end. The second advice, kind of what Colby and I were just talking about with MVP and just getting your idea out there, is I think a lot of people, again, you compare yourself to these big companies. We live in a great place here in Utah, like personally, where there's a lot of really successful businesses who have really huge acquisitions or, just great numbers. And then it's easy to get down on yourself. But what we try to focus on is just getting on first base, get to second base, get to third base, like get around the bases, and you're going to have a point on the board. Like you don't always have to swing for the fences to get back to home base. Mm-hmm. So try to keep things simple and lean, and just focus on like the things that you're good at, your core competencies, and keep things simple, and slowly but surely you'll get to where you need to be. And then I think my third piece of advice is very similar to all those things, is just keep things simple. I think that in today's world, I get bombarded on LinkedIn with hundreds a month of, you need this software, you need this, you've got to add this to your tech stack, you've got like all this stuff. And it can be really easy, especially as a young entrepreneur, to be like, whoa, they promised me this, they promised me X return on whatever. But you've got to keep things simple and lean. And so try, especially in today's world, I believe. And so where we try to focus is right now, like especially after we had a pretty low month in September and trying to ramp up for the holidays, is our goal for 2021 is to optimize. So we want to go as deep as we can with what we know and what we currently are using, instead of going wide and just adding anything that comes our way. So I think that my advice to anyone that's starting is go deep with what you have. Like own Instagram. Don't try to own Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, all the social, like choose one and focus on it and make it real. Like if you're spreading yourself too thin, then you're going to be lacking in all of the areas instead of being really competent in one. And I think that when you're first starting, or even now, I think that that's advice that can hold true. So those are my pieces of advice. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's what I'll leave you all with.
That was amazing. Oh, that's amazing. I'm just going to create a promotional clip just out of that. That was so on the money. No, really fantastic advice. I think for everybody that's out in the trenches or thinking about jumping in, it's worthwhile. I mean, the pain is real, but the satisfaction that comes out the other side, I think you'd probably agree, is also very real. There's something amazing about building what's in your mind and bringing it to life. And watching other people enjoy what you've created.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I'm not going to pontificate. So thank you for coming on today. Thank you for everyone that's attended. We have, for those that are on, there are 4 more interviews today. There's one that's coming up here in another 10 minutes. And then we've got 3 that start this afternoon, starting at 2 p.m. Pacific. And they're all back to back through the end of the day. Normally, we're just going to do 2 interviews per week. Through the end of the year. We're taking the week of I guess not Thanksgiving, but we're taking the week of Christmas off. So next week and the weeks following, there will be 2 interviews per week at 3 and 4 p.m. Pacific, and we invite you to join those as well. So McKensie, you and Colby kicked us off in an awesome way. Thank you so much for joining.
There are a couple more questions on here. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email, McKensie@threadwallets.com, and I'm happy to answer further questions from any of the participants.
You're amazing.
Awesome. Thanks,
all
guys.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thanks, McKenzie. See ya.
Bye.